All right, welcome back to American Sports Broadcasting, everybody. Got quite a bit to talk about today. The draft was began last night, and plenty of stuff going on in baseball. And the NBA playoffs too. So we'll start with you, Brian. What do you got for us?
All right. Well, the big news out of the NL is yesterday, second baseman for the Miami Marlins, D. Gordon, has been suspended for 80 games due to PED use, and that is to go effective immediately. This surprised a lot of people. D. Gordon, you wouldn't even expect. I mean, he's a great player, great hitter, but I mean, he's skinny, not a big guy. And it was definitely something very shocking. He won the NL batting title in 2015 with a 333 batting average, 88 runs scored, 58 steals. I mean, he just had a great year. And this also comes with it being the first season of Barry Bonds' tenure at the Marlins. So there could be a lot of talk. They believe that this PED started before that, but who knows? Maybe Barry Bonds is messing with the game once again. So big news out of there. Something to keep watch of. This could definitely hurt the Marlins big time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to win. I mean, because it calls that 2015 season into question. Did he do that honestly? And it's just, I don't know. If you're gonna play at this level, don't cheat, and we'll talk more about that later. But it's just dirty.
Definitely,
So
and last thing I want to say about this, I think the MLB really needs to look at their policy. I think they're doing good on the testing stuff, but I feel a player uses PEDs, they should not be able to play anymore. It taints the game, and you don't know anymore if the player is actually a good player or they're using PEDs. So I think the MLB needs to relook at that and really hammer down. But moving on to some more positive news. So the Nationals are still leading in the East at 14-7, but they did have a three-game losing streak. They were swept by the Phillies, which is a little crazy coming out of the East. In the Central, you have the Cubs ahead, 16-5, and out of the West now you have the Giants and the Dodgers tied in first for 12-11, with my Rockies with my bold pick falling to fourth for 9-12, but they're only 2 games back. So not too terrible. Nothing super surprising either, except the Giants coming up the ladder and starting to play good ball.
and everybody's talking about how it's the even year. So is it their time to win another World Series championship? And I guess we'll wait and see. But
Yeah, and I'll talk about that later on how they're seeming to shape that up again. But to start with the Nationals, they have three batters above 300 batting average. The team average is 233, not bad. But their pitching is where I really want to go. Team ERA is 235. Strasburg, who we talked about, his rookie season, then he got injured and all that. He's got 3 wins in 4 games played, and his ERA is 217, leading the team. And then also another big pickup they made in the offseason was Matt Scherzer, which was talked to be big for them. He's 2-1 in 5 games played, but his ERA is 4.35. So still a question of whether or not that was a good pickup or not for them.
quite.
And then we look at the Cubs, and we talk about the Cubs and the curse, but they're looking really good this year. Their team batting average is 255. They have 5 batters above 300, and Dexter Fowler is leading the pack. He's got 3 home runs, a 356 batting average, 15 RBI. So watch out for Fowler. But I think the biggest strong point for the Cubs is their pitching. Jake Arrieta, we talked about him last week. His ERA is now at an even 1. He's 5-0 in 5 games played, 36 innings pitched, and he's only allowed 18 hits. So I mean that's huge. He's pitching out of his mind, but speaking of the PEDs, there is now coming into question. They are going to start testing him a little more often. They think that there's a chance that he is using PEDs. And this would be the first big pitcher, if it's true, since Roger Clemens. So it could be big story.
I mean, I like to look at the positives of things. And I would like to think at least that he isn't doing anything like that. And plus, as a pitcher, it's not all about strength either. You got to be deceptive. You got to have good movement. You got to have good command, good pitch location. So it's not as easy as hitting. You just get stronger and can blow fast. I mean, yeah, you can blow a fastball by a guy a little easier if you're stronger, but that's not the whole story. So I'd like to think that he isn't using it. Still possible, but hopefully not.
Right. And the other positive for the Cubs in pitching is Josh Hamill. His ERA is .75. He is 3-0 in 4 games. So Cubs pitching is definitely doing good from their batting's good. They're hitting on all cylinders. But the question is, it's still early in the season. Can they keep this going? I don't want to jinx anything or anything like that, but this might be the Cubs' year. But they definitely got some tough competition with the Nationals in the East. But now we move to the West, which, this division seems to be the weakest in the NL. All teams are very close. But you look at the Giants, team batting average is .270, 4 batters above .300. But, as we talked about, it's the even year. Is this their year to win? Well, it's starting to shape up that way, at least on their batting, because you have Angel Pagan, a .325 batting average, 1 home run, 11 RBIs. You have Brandon Belt, .303 average, 3 home runs, 16 RBIs. You have Hunter Pence, .293, 4 home runs, 16 RBIs. The last time they won, these were the guys we talked about. These were the clutch hitters. And so they're starting to shape up with another good seasons. But the problem for them is their pitching this year. It's coming into question. Team ERA is .424. Johnny Cueto, who we talked about in the offseason, is actually leading the team with a .265 ERA. He's 4-1 in 5 games pitched. You have Bumgarner with a 3.64 ERA, Samardzija with a 3.86 ERA, but then you have players like Kane with a 6.43 ERA and Jake Peavy with a 6.83 ERA. That is going to be their problem. And if they can't get that figured out, it doesn't matter how many clutch hits Hunter Pence has or Brandon Belt has. If they can't get their pitching under control, it's I feel over for them.
Yep, defense definitely does win championships. We've seen it in baseball, we've seen it in football, and we've seen it in basketball. So it's definitely if you can't stop the other team from scoring, then
definitely. And and then we got to look. They're tied with the Dodgers in the West. The Dodgers team batting average is .247. They have 2 players above .300. Chase Utley, who was big talk last year with dirty slides or talk of a dirty slide, he's leading the team with a .307 batting average, 5 RBIs. So present batting average, but he's not producing those runs as much. And then Adrian Gonzalez, a .306, 15 RBIs, 3 home runs. The team ERA, though, 3.54 ERA. Kershaw's having another great year, 2.43 ERA, 2-1 in 5 games played. And then we have Kenta Maeda. I don't know. All I know is this guy, good for the Dodgers. 1.41 ERA, 3-1 in 5 games pitched. It's going to be important for whoever's going to win the West to have good pitching. I chose the Rockies. Problems for the Rockies. Their team ERA is 5.93. One of the highest in baseball right now, and that's not looking good. Trevor Story is starting to come back down from phenom status, batting average .241, 9 home runs, 15 RBIs. Still playing good for a rookie, still great year. But the question is going to be, can they pick up the slack? Can they get that pitching back? Because I think their batting's there. Their batting's there. It's the pitching that's the problem for the Rockies right now.
Well, and it's baseball. Pitchers go into slumps just like batters do. So, it can take a couple games, couple of starts in order to get that back. And but it's baseball. You're gonna bounce back eventually. It's just a matter of not letting it weigh on you. In the meantime.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think it's time to jump to the AL.
All right. Let's start off in the American League Central. We got the White Sox, and dare I say it, they are white hot still. 16-7. They just lost last night, but before that, they had a 6-game win streak going. Their offense is really starting to pick up the pace. The pitching is still phenomenal. Chris Sale hasn't lost yet. Jose Quintana is still doing real good. Not much that I didn't talk about last week has really changed significantly. coming into this week. In second place, we got Kansas City at 12-9. They've lost 3 in a row. They just got swept by the Los Angeles Angels, and they have now lost 4 consecutive road. Well, I think at this point they've lost 5 consecutive road games, but it's the first time that they've lost 4 in a row since 2014. The real reason for that is that they're starting to struggle with runners in scoring position. We've talked about that a little bit earlier this year. They really got to start putting those clutch hits together again. That was what propelled them to the World Series and got them the World Series victory. So they really need to start picking that up. And it's still early. They got a lot of baseball left, and so I imagine they'll probably be okay. Mike Moustakas is leading the way in terms of power. He's got 7 home runs, which last I checked was second in the major, tied for second in the major leagues in home runs. In the American League East, we got Baltimore Orioles. They're still leading it at 13-8. They've lost a few games here recently. They've had a little bit of an offensive slump, but they broke out of that against the first game against the White Sox last night. They got 15 hits to beat them 10-2. So they have 2 more games with the White Sox. Should be a good series if you're looking for some good baseball. Definitely check those out. And then in Boston, they have climbed up to second place now. They're at 12-10. Their offense has been looking pretty sharp recently. They don't have a whole lot of home runs. The guy who is leading them has 4, but they have a ton of RBIs. And the real thing of interest here is, their pitching is pretty okay, pretty good for the most part. But David Price has a 5.76 ERA after they spent a ton of money on him in the offseason, but he is 3-0. So again, he's getting a lot of run support, and if he keeps his ERA up there, he's going to keep needing it, and could be trouble, could not be. We'll just have to wait and see. In the American League West, it is very competitive right now. Leading it, still Texas Rangers at 12-10. They don't have a whole lot of power. We've already talked about that. Their highest guy has 3 home runs, but they're pretty balanced throughout the lineup, 3s, 2s, and 1s for their home run stats. And then like the Red Sox, they have really high RBI numbers and really pretty high batting averages. So just a really balanced team, but not necessarily a whole lot of power. And then in second place, Seattle has climbed up the ranks here recently. They're at 11-10. Interesting stuff about the Seattle Mariners. They're being sold, and that'll be finalized come August. But John Stanton will replace Howard Lincoln as the chairman and CEO, and like I said, it'll take a few months to be finalized. But haven't seen anything about relocation. Haven't seen anything about their name getting changed. So that's about it there. Robinson Cano. He has 8 home runs and 24 RBIs. He's definitely the leader of the team offensively. Their pitching is pretty good for the most part, with the exception of Wade Miley, who has a 7.04 ERA. Yeah, he needs to work on that a little bit. None of the starters, though, despite having some pretty decent ERAs, none of them have more than 2 wins. Steve Cishek has 5 saves with a .9 ERA, so he's pitching pretty well for him, and 9 strikeouts over 9 appearances. Most of their bullpen is pretty solid with an ERA around 3, so not bad there. And one other thing to say about the AL West is that they're a very competitive division right now. Seattle is half a game behind Texas, and then LA is 1 game behind Texas, and Oakland is 1.5 games behind Texas, and then Houston is 5 games back. But listen, it's still early. Don't give up on Houston yet. They have a lot of time left, so don't worry about that at all. I think that's all I got.
The last thing I just want to say about the MLB in a whole, I think we're seeing that this year, instead of being the year of the pitcher, I think we're seeing the year of the batter. We have these teams that have decent ERAs. We have single pitchers doing really well. But, as we talked about, some of these teams who have bad ERAs, they're still winning games, and it's because of that run support. I think it's I think it's coming back to the year of the hitter this year.
Absolutely. You see teams like Baltimore, Toronto, and Chicago Cubs. A lot of teams are just really pouring it on with the offense, and a lot of other teams are poised to do so, like LA, who has been in a bit of a slump, but seems to be coming out of it. They have quite a few opportunities for hitting a lot of home runs, and I believe you're probably right there.
Yeah. So where are we moving next?
Next up, I got the NFL. Let's start off here before we get into the draft. The draft started last night, but before we get into that, Deflategate is back. Tom Brady was suspended again after an appeal to a panel of 3 judges overturned the ruling that was originally made by a lower judge that the NFL did not have the power to suspend Tom Brady. And let's remember the history of this a little bit here. Right after Deflategate, the NFL said, "All right, we're gonna investigate this situation, see what happened." Patriots said, "Okay, yeah, sure, that's fine." And then the official terminology that came out was that it was more likely than not that they knew that the balls were underinflated, which is enough in many court cases of various types, many criminal court cases, that is enough to incriminate someone. And so that was the official terminology that was used. And then so the NFL said, okay, hey, you don't get a bunch of draft picks, and Tom Brady is going to be suspended for the first 4 games. And then Robert Kraft said, whoa, no, that's too much. No. How about not? How about you just let us go? And so, I mean, and then there was the whole, they appealed to a judge, and then a government official got involved with sports. I mean, that just doesn't sound right to me. But he overturned it and said that the NFL did not have the power to suspend Tom Brady, so he played last year. And this year, the NFL appealed to a higher court that he should be suspended, and they ruled that he should as well. So now we are back to Tom Brady being suspended, which has raised up all the controversy again. And I can go on forever for this, but Brian, what do you think about this?
First of all, in these scenarios, I agree with you. Government should not be involved. I'm sorry, we have more important things to worry about in government than sports. But besides that fact, this, I think, is good for the NFL. This is finally the time when they can put their foot down. There was talk after this, putting the suspension back on, that there would be talks about dropping the suspension a little bit. There's no reason to. You cannot tell me a quarterback like Tom Brady, who has been in the league for how long, doesn't know when a ball is deflated. You can't tell me the center didn't know. You can't tell me a lot of those players did not know.
And not just the players, the officials too. When they're picking up the ball after spot it, they would feel it. The ball boys, they would know it. I mean, there are so many, and that team with the kind of influence that Belichick has, you really think he didn't know? There's just so many people.
Right. The thing is, this isn't the first time the Patriots have been caught in, a possible cheating scandal. I mean, we look at, they were filming other teams' practices, and, they said, oh, we had no idea that wasn't allowed. There's got to, the NFL could say whatever they want. The Patriots could say, we bring all this revenue in for you. This has got to stop. We got to bring integrity back to the game. And this is the way to do it, showing that, you can be top of the league, but you're not above the rules. Tom Brady should sit the 4 games. There should be no more appeals. This is going to hurt the Patriots big time for Tom Brady to sit, because really they don't really have another quarterback on the roster. And if anybody watches South Park, we know they call Bill Belichick the greatest cheater of all time. And this hits it home.
If you haven't seen that clip, definitely look that up.
Yes,
that is quite entertaining.
Yes, Eric Cartman, uses Bill Belichick as his idol for the greatest cheater of all time. Please watch it, and you'll totally understand why this is so big a ruling.
And some people are saying that it's all about Roger Goodell feeling the need to get some power back, and that's true. You wouldn't be appealing this again unless you felt like you were losing some power here. And I mean, it's definitely a power play. That's not the question, but it shouldn't have even come to this situation, in my opinion, at all in the first place. Because I mean, call me harsh, or I mean, I don't care what you think about my opinion here, but in my opinion, that Super Bowl should be taken away from them. And I thought that immediately, just because if you have to cheat to get there, then you didn't earn it. And people said everything about how, oh, but they were running the ball really well, and I just don't care. If you cheat, you don't deserve to win, and that's that. So.
Exactly, and this has been the controversy, in a lot of different sports. We talked about PEDs in baseball. They still call Barry Bonds the home run king, but we know that he was using performance enhancing drugs, so that should be taken away. I think that the Super Bowl should be taken away, but then comes the question of what line do you draw? Because if you do it there, then saying, well, this person got this call and trying to put up, these kinds of plays on games. I see where, the NFL, the MLB, is hesitant to do that, but, at least getting the suspension showing, the Patriots and Tom Brady, you're not above our rules, and I'll be the first one to say, Roger Goodell, not my favorite guy.
No,
not my favorite guy at all.
Not.
But you know what? To say the commissioner doesn't have the power to lay down suspensions, and he even said, and I agree with him on this, then what is his job? If you're running the league, you're running all these, of course he's got the power to do it. The commissioner of baseball has the power to hit somebody with a PED suspension. That's in their job. So, for the Patriots to say he didn't have the power, then my question to them is, who does have the power? Are they the ones who has the power to decide if their team should be hit with penalties? And if that's their thought process, they have a real problem.
Well, and then there are also people who are saying that individual team owners should have some sort of a vote on this. Do they want the suspension? Do they not? But that's looking like it's not going to happen for reasons that, I mean, Roger Goodell had a comment on this that I actually thought was pretty reasonable, where he said that there are certain teams who play during that 4-week span who are going to say, absolutely keep that suspension because they don't want to face Tom Brady. But then you have teams like the Bengals who are they're going to play him on his home debut after the suspension, that first game, and they don't want to face the wrath of Tom Brady, so they're going to vote, hey, no, let's kick it back a little bit, let's not make it so harsh. And so he doesn't want all that bias going into it, and that's reasonable, I think. And so the commissioner should be able to do this. And then there's the other thing that people keep talking about, how and I don't want to get too far into this, but if you suspend a guy for 4 games for underinflating footballs, and you also suspended other guys for 4 games for domestic violence cases, and what kind of message does that send? And there's some truth to that for sure, and they should probably go over these things again. But I think the bottom line is just don't cheat, in my opinion.
Yeah, and not dragging this on and on, but back to what you said, about 4 games for the guy who does domestic violence, 4 games for somebody who basically cheats in a ball game, but then you got to look at the NFL. It's like, where do they draw the line? Now, I think anybody who does domestic violence or anything outside of the game that negatively affects the sport is definitely something that needs to be punished. But it's like, how much can they punish somebody for something outside of the game? I think the NFL definitely has a place in that. But since it's outside of their control, I understand why it's not a bigger suspension. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand why it's not. But something that directly affected a game that is run by the NFL and their officials and on, they have first hit at it, and so I think 4 games for Tom Brady is appropriate. But yeah, I think they definitely need to look at the domestic violence issue. And I know the NFL has tried to do a lot of different things to combat that, along with NFL commercials during the Super Bowl about it. Something they're battling, but Tom Brady definitely deserves at least 4 games. But I go back to what I said about PEDs. If you cheat in the game that you supposedly love so much and it's your career, if you have to cheat to do it, you shouldn't be able to play. Now, in this scenario, when it's not 100% for sure that he caused it or knew about it, whatever, maybe not that harsh, but there are some things. If you're having to cheat in the game that you consider your career and that you love so much, you shouldn't be playing if you have to cheat. But I think that's where we stop that and sort of sideline into the draft.
All right. So obviously we're going to talk about the picks from the 2 big trades that we talked about. The number 1 pick for the LA Rams that they traded away the world for, Jared Goff from California. He had 12,195 yards and 96 touchdowns over 3 years starting for California. And most experts are thinking that this was a good trade by them. But like we've already talked about, you just kind of have to wait and see. And then the number 2 pick for quarterback Carson Wentz. He was from North Dakota State. He went to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a really big guy with a strong arm. His intelligence test puts him among the smartest quarterbacks and really players at all in the draft. And they have said that Sam Bradford is still going to start this year, and Wentz is going to watch while they try to get him up to their standards. And that's probably a good play. I think the Eagles are probably playing that one actually pretty right. They still traded away a lot to get this guy, but if he's a guy that they really believe in and they really believe with some coaching that he can get to where they want to be, and they don't expect the world of him right away, and they were willing to give up what they gave up for it, then probably a pretty decent deal.
Yeah, I would say out of these first 2 picks, I think the winner out of this is the Rams. I do agree they shouldn't have gave the world away, but I think Jared Goff, playing at Cal, and I got to watch him a couple of games. I think he'll be able to transition into the NFL. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a legendary quarterback, but I think this is good for the Rams. I'm very hesitant on Carson Wentz. I like the guy. I think he's a good quarterback, but I'm just so hesitant for a team to give so much away and put so much on a player that played in Division II football. So I think the winner out of at least these first 2 picks is the Rams. I think they made the right choice.
I'm going to disagree with you there, actually. I think with that intelligence that he has, it doesn't necessarily translate to football smarts, but it certainly helps. And I think with that, and Philadelphia is in a situation where they can afford not to play him right away. They can afford, if they're getting blown out or if somehow they are blowing out somebody else, they can, put him in, get a little experience for him. And where the Rams aren't really in a situation where they can necessarily do that as easily. But I think with them planning, taking time to coach him, taking the time to get him to where he needs to be, I think he, at least in the long run, I think he'll have more of an impact. I think he'll be a better player for them in the future. Certainly not this upcoming year, since he won't even be playing, but for the future, I think that the Eagles got a better deal out of this one. But only time will tell.
Yes.
Next, Brian seems to agree with you. Next circle, number 4, the running back Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State. He went to the Dallas Cowboys. He had almost 4,000 rushing yards over 3 years. He's expected to be a 3-down back to run it, pass block, and do a little catching out of the backfield.
Yeah, I think this is a good pick for Dallas. He was definitely really good at Ohio State, but my thing with Dallas is, though, they will never get anywhere until they get rid of Tony Romo. That is my feeling. No matter if they have the best running backs, the best line, Tony Romo has to go. So even though this is a good pick, I think for Dallas, I don't think it's going to amount to much until Tony Romo is gone.
Well, I think it's a great pick for Dallas to help fill that void left by DeMarco Murray a couple years ago when he left, and I think that he'll do a lot for them. In terms of Tony Romo, when he before he got hurt, he was playing pretty good. He was probably playing some of the best football of his career, and then he got hurt and kind of ruined that. And then he came back after he still had a broken collarbone and thought that was a good idea. And guess what? He broke it again. So he's not necessarily the smartest guy in the world, but we already knew that, I think. And but if he's healthy, I think he'll be all right for him. You could look to move on to somebody else at some point. He is kind of getting up there in age a little bit, but not a huge concern for me right now. Um, Next up, I have number 8, Jack Conklin, offensive lineman from Michigan State. He went to the Titans. Many considered him to be the top offensive lineman in the draft due to his size, speed, and versatility. I was personally hesitant about him because he was just a junior, and I think down in the trenches you really need that extra experience coming up to the NFL. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But he's a big guy, he's a smart guy, and they have high hopes for him.
Yeah, so the one I looked at was the ninth pick by the Bears, Leonard Floyd from Georgia. They had traded up to get this guy. He had 68 tackles and 4.5 sacks. I talked to some Bears fans this morning, and they are not happy about this one for the reason being that there is talk that he would have been around in the second round, maybe even the third round. So people were looking for a bigger pick. But the experts say, he's really good, probably strong for the Bears. But, I think the Bears have a lot of problems. I don't know. I think they still have a couple more years to get back to where they need to be.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Their head coach has done a lot to get them back to being competitive and on a game-to-game basis. That's not saying they win every game, obviously, but I think they're putting up more of a fight in each game than they have been the last couple of years. And this draft pick will probably help them out with that.
But I will take another shot at another quarterback. And you can't blame Jay Cutler all the time because his offensive line sometimes doesn't give him enough protection. But once again, I think this is a team that needs to go out and find that next quarterback for themselves. Jay Cutler, I think, is a good guy, but I just don't think he's right for the Bears. The Bears need to figure that out. They need to figure out their offense and get a new quarterback.
Next up, I have number 19, Shaq Lawson, defensive end from Clemson. He went to the Buffalo Bills. He can play defensive end. He can play outside linebacker in a 3-4. He's a great pass rusher. A lot of people thought that he was one of the best pass rushers in the draft. But he had shoulder surgery, and that dropped him a little bit in terms of where he was drafted at. And so as long as he stays healthy, it should be good. We're just got to worry about that a little bit with the shoulder surgery. And I guess we'll just wait and see on him.
Yeah, the next one I looked at was number 26 by Denver. Picked Paxton Lynch from Memphis, quarterback. He had 3,776 yards with 28 touchdowns. But I think this is a really good pick for Denver. Memphis may be a small college football school, but they really showed something this past year, beating Ole Miss, moving into the top 10. And I think Paxton Lynch, he's a tough guy, tough quarterback. I think this is good for Denver. I'm not saying necessarily he's the answer for their quarterback since Peyton Manning has retired. But
and Osweiler left in free agency as well.
Right. So I'm not saying necessarily he's the answer, but I think for him to go in and move into Denver and play quarterback, potentially, unless they make some trades or something. But I think he will be good for Denver. I think he'll put them in the right direction. I like this pick by Denver.
Yeah, probably a pretty good choice. Again, probably fairly similar to the Eagles, where he doesn't necessarily need to contribute right away, especially with that. I don't even have a word to describe their defense. It's just beyond belief how good they are. And they could probably not another Super Bowl this year, but they could probably make it to the playoffs just on that defense. And so, I mean, probably a pretty solid pick by
You
them.
know, I'm not necessarily saying they win it, but watch out for Denver. Watch out for
Yeah,
Denver.
for sure, their defense. Is,
I think Paxton Lynch is going to surprise a couple people. Like I said, I don't think he's going to be legendary. He's not a Peyton Manning. He's not a John Elway. But I think with that defense, and if he could even play half as good as Peyton with other guys in the offense stepping up, watch out for them.
Yeah,
watch out.
They got a good receiving core. They got good running backs. I mean, no one's disputing any of that. It's just I don't personally see them making. They're going to be a good team. Don't get me wrong. It's just I don't see them winning it all. I don't see them even necessarily getting to the conference championship. But that's a little early to be talking about all that fun stuff. So we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, talking about who is left. A bunch of really good tackles, or defensive tackles and defensive ends. Everyone was saying this was a really deep class. And I think the depth of this class limited a lot of these guys where they would have been picked at. Most of these guys would have been picked really early on in the first round, but everybody knew that it was so deep that a lot of teams just didn't target it, which then it leads to them falling in their draft order a little bit, which really is beneficial to the teams because the higher draft pick you are, the more you get paid. So you can pay a guy a lot less than he's really worth just because his draft class was so good that year. So something to keep an eye on. So some other guys that are left, Reggie Ragland, the linebacker from Alabama, he's supposedly really good. Can play everywhere, really versatile, middle linebacker, outside linebacker, right, left, doesn't really matter. Um, and then the big surprise that you and I both wrote down, Derrick Henry, also from Alabama, the Heisman winner, did not get picked at all. And really the only running back that went was Ezekiel Elliott. I think there might have been one other one, but
I wrote down here. I personally think Derrick Henry was the best running back to pick. Just in 2015, and we had talked about this going up to the college football playoffs, 2,219 yards with 28 touchdowns. He was Alabama's offense. Without him, Alabama would have been nothing. Scored majority of their touchdowns, and nothing to take away from Ezekiel Elliott, but you look, Derrick Henry had 400, almost 500 more yards and 5 more touchdowns. Now, I'm not saying stats are everything, and everything on paper should not define a player, but I think Alabama plays tougher teams than Ohio State does. I think Alabama proved more, and for Derrick Henry to go and be as tough as he is, I think he was the better choice to go in the first round over Elliott. But that's my opinion, and I've shared on this, on this before. I am not an Alabama fan at all. This is hard for me to say, but I think he was the best running back to choose out of this, and I'm very surprised he's going to wait till second round.
Well, I don't know about absolute best, but I definitely agree. Probably should have been a first round pick. I like to think of myself as a run first kind of mentality guy, and when I saw Derrick Henry for the first time, I just couldn't believe my eyes. He's so big. He's so fast. I think I've said this before. He reminds me of like a fast Eddie Lacy kind of, and not as chubby. So really, just a very good running back all around. And so somebody's going to get a steal there in the second round with him. Last guy I have, Jason Spriggs, the offensive tackle from Indiana. A lot of guys expected he would go really early, and he didn't get picked either. So probably again, there were a lot of people in there. There are every year that don't get picked that we expect to get picked, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. All right, does that take us to NBA?
It does. And everybody, I have Hornet fever. I've told you guys that my pick was the Hornets over the Heat, and what do you know? They have come back and won 3 straight, which is huge. I told you guys that Jeremy Lin would be the key factor, and he has. In the regular season, he was scoring about 10, 11 points per game. Now in the postseason, he's up to 14 points per game. The first game that the Hornets came back and beat the Heat, he had an 18-point game. But the other big player for the Hornets right now is Kemba Walker. He's got 22 points per game, about 3.5 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists per game, and he's playing 37 minutes. That's huge for the Hornets. Watch them. As I said before, they are going to take out the Heat. Watch them to keep going. If Lynn can stay hot, watch them. They are the dark horse team, and that's why I'm in all black for the dark horse team.
All right. So now that he got that out of the way, let's talk about how things are going for the rest of the playoffs. The Raptors are leading the Pacers 3-2 right now, and the winner of the Raptors and Pacers will play the winner of the Hornets and Heat for the quarterfinal. The Cavaliers swept the Pistons 4-0, and then the Hawks beat the Celtics 4-2. So we got that pick wrong. So the Cavaliers are going to play the Hawks in the quarterfinal. Personally, I expect the Cavaliers to win that one. I know you don't put a whole lot of stock into the Cavaliers, but I think still they have too many weapons to lose this early.
I'm not saying the Celtics. Celtics are very young. They're in rebuilding.
Isaiah Thomas had a great job, a great year for them,
Definitely.
and definitely they're gonna be back next year.
And as you said, I don't put a lot in the Cavs, but watch the Hawks. And I mean, the Hawks really showed something here, beating the Celtics, I think. So watch the Hawks. I'm not saying necessarily they will knock out the Cavs, but definitely watch them. That is a series to watch. I'm undecided on that one so far.
And then in the West, we got Golden State beating the Rockets 4-1, but Steph Curry sprained a knee ligament and will be out at least for the duration of next week. And that's going to be very crucial as they're going to be playing the winner of the Blazers and Clippers, who the Clippers also have been decimated by injuries. They lost Blake Griffin for the rest of the postseason with a quad injury. Chris Paul had to have surgery on his hand, and he's out indefinitely. So the Blazers are ahead 3-2, and I think we picked the Clippers, but with the injuries, it's not looking good for them. Even if they somehow do win this series, even without Steph, I don't see them beating Golden State.
Right. And talking about Curry's absence, the people that got to step up are Klay Thompson, which he has. He's getting about 23.5 points per game. But also, I feel Draymond Green and Iguodala have to step up. They got to play big down low. They got to do that. Even without Curry, I think the Warriors easily get past either the Clippers or Trailblazers, looking like the Trailblazers. I think they get past and do just fine. I feel Golden State is still a team that would win the finals. Without Curry, it'd be a lot harder, and the series would be a lot closer. But it is going to come down if they have to face the Spurs. That is going to be the big challenge for them if Curry, even if he comes back, I don't think he's going to be 100% when he comes back. It's going to be a very big test for them.
Right. So the Spurs, they swept Memphis 4-0, and then they're going to be playing Oklahoma City, who beat the Dallas Mavericks 4-1. They're going to be playing for the quarterfinals. I see the Spurs taking this one. Oklahoma City has a lot of speed and great ability, and Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant. But I don't see them beating the experience and skills of the Spurs. So I have the Spurs taking OKC, and then that's when it gets really interesting. If Golden State can win without Steph, and then is Steph back to play, who I think probably the Spurs, is Steph going to be back for that? And if he's not, it's going to be tough. The Spurs were one of the few teams in the league this year who always gave the Golden State Warriors a fight, and so it'll be close either way. But without Steph, I think probably the Spurs might take that one. That's getting a little ahead of ourselves here. But I guess we'll have to wait.
Yeah, but I am going to disagree with you here. I'm going to pick the Thunder over the Spurs for this reason exactly. The Thunder have learned from their mistakes in the past. when they lost in the NBA Finals to the Heat, which shouldn't have happened. They definitely had chances to win it, and they should have. I think the Thunder have learned that. Secondly, the Thunder, this is very important for them. If they can make a run at possibly, at least coming up to Golden State or making it to the finals, if they can't make that run, as we talked about before, Kevin Durant is going to come up on free agency. If they cannot make a case to him that they are going to go on and possibly down the road, or even, if they did it this year, but down the road, looks like they can win finals. And I'm not saying that is Durant's, that's not why he's with a team, just to win championships. But you have to show a player like that your team has the chance to do it. It's very important for them to show Durant, hey, we can get there and we need you here. And I'm not saying he's going to stay. There's a good likelihood that he is going to leave. I would love to see him stay in OKC, so they got to make this run.
Well, and Durant also, he's going to be auditioning really for the league during these next couple weeks to say, hey, I'm worth the money that I'm going to demand. And getting far would help him a lot with that. People a lot of times look at playoff wins, sometimes more than they really should. So a lot of times that will define a career more than other stats and regular season wins. So it'll all be kind of interesting to see how it'll all go down. But if Oklahoma City, I guess that's getting too far ahead of ourselves to talk about the semifinals right now.
Yes.
But it's so tempting just to keep talking about it anyway.
But there is one last thing I want to hit on in the NBA. Now, the Rockets have been knocked out, and by the Warriors, which we saw coming. I think everybody saw it coming. But the big thing that we're seeing now is there is talk. Dwight Howard has one more year on his contract, but he can opt out. A lot of people say he's going to opt out for this reason exactly. Howard and Harden have not been getting along. It's been showing in games. Harden will throw up an alley-oop, and there's miscommunication, and Howard will miss it, which is not normal for him. And if we look at it, over his career, he's normally hitting about 17.8 points per game, 12.7 rebounds per game. In this season, he's down to 13.7 points per game, 11.8 rebounds per game. And and an interesting thing behind this, Howard started out in the Magic for about eight seasons. Then he went to the then he went to the Lakers for a year. Then he went to the Rockets, and now he's there till present. There is talks that he might go back to the Magic. But here's the problem for Dwight Howard, and I've said this a long time. He wants to be the superstar. He wants to be Top Gun. In LA, Kobe lectured him. For good reason, because as far as I'm concerned, Howard, he's a talented guy, but he's a big crybaby. He's bad for teams. He's bad for chemistry on a team. If I'm any team in the NBA, I'm careful to pick him up. I think the only place he's fine to go is the Magic. But the thing is he's got to get over it. He can't always be the superstar. He's got to stop being the whiny baby on the sideline who, if he doesn't get what he wants, he doesn't play hard and he just gives up. If I was the Rockets, I'd push him right out the door because I think he's hurting them big time. There's no reason that the Rockets shouldn't have had a better season. And yeah, I think Howard, his time in the NBA is running out.
All right, so that'll probably wrap us up for today. It went a lot longer than our last video did, but our last video was also unusually short. Remember to like and subscribe. Also, next week we will not be having a video because it is our finals week and we just can't really get the timing to work out right. So look for us to come back on May 13th, the Friday after next Friday. We're going to try to, neither of us are going to be in the same city, but we're going to try to find a way to get a Skype call recorded or something of that nature, and we're going to try to make that work. So I guess that's pretty much it then.